Thanks again to Red River Mayor Linda Calhoun for speaking with us, and welcome back to our Line Opinion panelists. As Mayor Calhoun told us, there's a serious talk of ending the Red River Memorial Day motorcycle rally after 41 years. Officials in Las Vegas and now Berlin have announced, Las Vegas announced their Rough Rider motorcycle rally in July is canceled, and Berlin canceled theirs as well. Is that the right call, Dan? Should other local leaders consider canceling future events like this? I mean, it's a personal opinion question, but given what we've seen in the news, if you're a mayor, why would you have a motorcycle rally in your town right now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's my role to give advice to mayors about what sorts of events they should run. But I mean, it is pretty sad that that it comes to this, given that there are so many people who enjoy these events who, are not carrying weapons, not getting in trouble, who enjoy New Mexico's scenery and the social aspect of it. So it's certainly disappointing to see it come to an end if that's what's happening.
Right. Eric, there's a lot of local folks up there who have been quoted in the papers as saying this was bound to happen at some point. Taos County Undersheriff Jerry Hogriff, if I'm saying that name correctly, quote, "Some of you up here may have heard me say this 20 years ago when I was still working on this rally. It's like sitting on an open powder keg with a lit cigarette." It's an interesting quote, isn't it?
Well, here's the thing. Motorcycle rallies happen across this country, as you've said, for 40, 50 years plus. There's nothing unique to them. I haven't seen any research that said there's this strong correlation between motorcycle gangs and in active gun violence. You may not like that they are rowdy and there's probably some fighting going on. Again, I was disappointed in the mayor's response because she was asked sort of directly, is this about the rally? Is this about banditos? Is this about alcohol? Or is this about guns? The one thing that caused the shootings was the guns. I mean, there was alcohol involved and bad blood. There's been bad blood among motorcycle gangs at time memorial, and they fight it out. Maybe there's some knives involved, but the level of violence, gun violence, and actual lethal results, again, it's not about motorcycle gangs. It's not about beefs between certain groups. It's not about the countless rallies that happen out there. It's not about motorcycles. It's about the guns. And even in this community where a mayor's having to deal with the aftermath, she couldn't muster, given the politics in that part of the state, she couldn't muster the will to say, like, maybe we got to think about the gun stuff. It was the denial that we hear from so many of our elected officials at all levels is like, well, it's got to be mental health. Maybe it's the gangs. Maybe it's the drugs. Maybe it's something else. Bottom line is people wouldn't have been shot if there weren't guns involved.
That's right. Joel, I'm curious from your end of the world how you see things like this. Meaning, let's assume everybody that comes to the motorcycle rally, or a good percentage, has a gun for protection. Do you see that differently as opposed to like a private citizen trying to protect themselves? Because we have people claiming self-defense here, but the self-defense people also shot people in self-defense.
Sure.
So to Eric's point, if everybody has a gun, how do we manage this kind of thing from your end of the world?
I don't think you do. I mean, I agree exactly what Eric's saying. It's the gun, stupid. Now, I don't understand the difference between a private citizen and a motorcycle gang member, because I believe they're probably private citizens as well, right? So you have the right of association of people, and I think if we've given out this very broad Second Amendment right to people, I don't know how you could stop it. Right. One of the things I was somewhat concerned about when the mayor was saying is that while they're not going to have the official rally, she doesn't believe it's going to end for some time either. Right. That people will still go. I mean, there's the right of association that people have, and they'll go, and that creates, I think, some type of law enforcement dilemma. You see, they faced a dilemma here when they had, it seemed to be that they had some, at least advance warning about the amount of people that were going to show up there.
That's right.
And that perhaps the law enforcement response was not commensurate to that. Now, what happens when you don't have an official rally?
You can't put police at the border and turn them away.
Of course not.
Without,
Of course not. But what's the presence like going to be there? And I also feel for the other law-abiding citizens of Red River, the economic impact that this has.
Let's get to that. Dan, interestingly, Red River marked the second mass shooting in our state in less than 2 weeks, as you know. And the Taos County Sheriff's Office, where did the breakdown come? I read something, they had 35 officers standing by, but they also knew there were hundreds, if not in the thousands, of these banditos headed our way from Texas Highway Patrol, had told us this. Was there, in your sense of it, the breakdown between the amount of law enforcement present, maybe it was everybody available, who knows, but something didn't quite match up here. What's your sense of that?
One problem that kind of pops up throughout the state is coordination among these different agencies, and you have tension sometimes between sheriffs and cities, and it sounds like there was some dispute that also involved money, where the sheriff's going to be paid overtime, this kind of thing. These are tricky things that go across jurisdictional lines. I will say that one thing that comes up in the legislature repeatedly is they do hear about the deterrent effect of police officers rather than longer sentences. You brought up mandatory minimums earlier. Yeah. So, in terms of the policy experts who testify before the legislature, they tend to emphasize a visible presence of police officers, the number of police officers, rather than longer sentences. The answer to this particular situation or what happened in Farmington, I'm not sure what the easy policy solution would be.
Good point. That's a fair way to finish that thought because nobody really knows. Eric, what would, pick up on Dan's point here because this has come up a lot, what would a proper police presence look like in something where you've got hundreds of banditos coming, you've got other motorcycle groups coming, you've got limited intel, let's just assume? It doesn't mean everybody in the entire state police force needs to be there. I mean, what's the appropriate response for law enforcement?
Not to sound like a broken record, but I feel like we get into these alternative sort of explanations, and you can have a huge show of force. Right. Remember, police are armed too, and police are human, and there's also, I think, decent arguments to be made that when there's it's been made in even our downtown, when there's this sort of feel of tension because of police presence, that has sort of had a reactive, drugs or alcohol and lots of armed people to that equation, and it almost becomes inevitable that sometimes it's a cop having to shoot somebody, which happens a lot in our city and all across the country. So I'm just not convinced that I feel like we are continually grasping at alternative explanation, alternative hypotheses around what's happening. The answer is, look, we could have had the National Guard there, and there might have been some shootings because they're all armed. That's now, we've decided as a society we want law enforcement, we want our military, which goes back to the constitutional sort of question. I think people disagree on what the intent was. I happen to believe that we've completely misread that, and not by accident. I think it's been an orchestrated effort over many, many decades by an industry that benefits from this, and frankly, a broken political system that allows that to happen. But the point is, I do not believe that more cops, better cops, more uniformed cops necessarily would have changed the outcome here, as it hasn't in Farmington, as it hasn't across the country. That's right. Because at the end of the day, you don't know who's armed, you don't know how they're going to react, you don't know what they're on, you don't know what the record is, because we've just decided to allow anyone, pretty much anyone in most states to have a weapon. That's right.
Joe, real quick, does the FBI play a role in assisting local law enforcement in these things? Is there anything shared traditionally? How does that work?
Oh, absolutely. I know there's a number of task forces. I know one of the senior agents who had testified at the hearing up in Taos is a subject matter expert on this. I've worked with him for many years. So they do have a very big support role, particularly here in Albuquerque. I know they have a violent gang task force that's very, very active, both in state court as well as in federal court. So they do play this kind of overall caretaking and coordination responsibility. I think they do a very admirable job of doing so.
Good stuff. Dan, you touched on this a little bit earlier, but I do want to touch on what the possibilities for the next legislative session, given all that we've had, and thinking about what did or did not pass, particularly last year, this past session, I should say, and the session before that. Are we goosed into another frame of mind here with all these incidents? Does Red River contribute to this idea that we may perhaps need to do something about guns a little more vigorously here?
It could. It's hard to say exactly, what the political dynamics will be this next session. But, to Eric's point, the legislators have been, they have been sort of engaged in this conflict over firearms and trying to balance what they believe they're allowed to do by the law, what is feasible politically. In terms of proposals that I think that we'll hear will be, proposals to restrict AR-15 style firearms. That doesn't mean it'll get through. The legislature has had a lot of trouble defining what is an assault weapon. There has been some movement towards a waiting period, like a 14-day waiting period, which is intended to make sure that background checks get completed. There's the potential of raising the age limit to 21 for certain firearms. Those are the kind of proposals we'll probably see, but as the legislature can be hard to predict. They argue about the same thing for a really long time, and then one year it happens. So it's hard to know what'll happen. But yeah, I mean, it's impossible to imagine that this will not be part of the debate.
Yeah, Joel, in 10 seconds or less, is it AR-15s or handguns the problem? Meaning, is it the bigger weapons or the smaller weapons? That's the bigger problem in your world.
I think they're both a problem, but I mean, just think about the amount of bullets you can shoot with a bigger gun, with an assault rifle.
That's
so
right.
for something like that, I think it's fairly easy to determine that, but overall, I mean, we have 300 million or so guns, and more than that in this country, even with a 14-day waiting ban. And
right.
what are we gonna do now? And until we have a real reckoning with this, with our relationship with firearms, these are all just going to be similarly one-day news stories.
Derek's point
move
earlier.
on.
That's right. Thanks again to our Line Opinion panelists. We'll be back one more time for a final conversation about the governor's resurrection of an organized crime commission and whether it has a chance to make a difference in what we're talking about.